everybody. Welcome to C3 Films. Today we are doing another episode of It Wasn't That Good. My name is Cheryl, and this is
Chris.
Today we're going to be talking about the very first episode of Secret Invasion. It is on Disney Plus. And honestly, I know there's only been one episode out so far, but I may not be very impressed. Um, yeah. First, let me start off by saying that we are gonna be going into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen it yet, you may or may not watch it. It is up to you. I don't really recommend it. So we'll tell you why right now.
I'm kind of curious what you have to say, Cheryl, as somebody who doesn't um know the comic book storyline for Secret Invasion. This is a storyline that's taken place in the comics in different ways. It also appeared on the Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon that came out like like a couple of years ago. Like I want to think that was like 2014 or something, but it was also in there. And so this is like another kind of iconic storyline from the comics of Marvel, the pages of Marvel, kind of like Civil War and stuff like that. So I
Whoops.
have.
Sorry. No, go on. Sorry, I moved something by accident. But no, continue.
Okay, no worries. But yeah, so like I'm curious, like, were you how you would feel as someone that didn't know what the content was going in? Because I remember when we mentioned it, you said you had no idea what it was, and I was excited because I was like, okay, so if Cheryl doesn't know what this is about, I wonder how she's gonna react to this because the hook is spoiled for me before I even go in because I know exactly what it's about, and I don't remember if the trailers kind of like showed it off too. They probably did, but it sounded like you went in completely blind. So I am kind of curious, just like what were your thoughts when you first started the episode and you started seeing the things that were happening? And also, did you see Captain Marvel?
Yes. I saw
Okay.
Captain Marvel, but as many of you may know, I try to avoid trailers. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even see a trailer for it. I didn't know anything about it at all. But when I saw the picture, it was like, oh, it's Nick Fury. Okay, so it's a Marvel thing. I Going into it, I felt very lost. I was like, "What?" And I kind of got it. Like I knew who Danvers was and everything, and so I remembered the aliens that are like changelings and such. But so I get why you know the guy was like, "You can't trust anyone," and why he like basically killed Martin Freeman's character, which wasn't actually Martin Freeman's character. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, maybe a big part of it is because I'm not familiar with the comics. But I don't think that's fair for the people who aren't familiar with the comics because,
No, it should stand on its own. It should
yeah,
stand. It should stand on its own base because at this point, Marvel has created a whole cinematic universe of people and a whole like fan base of people that have not read a single comic book of Marvel, but just know the cinematic storytelling of Marvel. So it has to work within the context of whatever knowledge you would gain from just watching these movies and shows. So I think that's completely fair for it to be able to expect it to be able to uphold itself on that merit.
yeah, and I think for the most part, after watching the first episode, I think I got the gist of it. Like, essentially, there's like this scroll aliens that kind of went rogue and decided to form like some kind of rebellion, and they're kind of acting like a terrorist group, like many things that we have seen in movies and television. It's not really any different. It's just in the guise of a different universe, different
Mm-hmm.
characters. And I mean, I think the huge issue for me though is like, yes, I have seen a lot of Marvel stuff, but it didn't seem to be enough, and there didn't seem to be enough like of like spoon fed information to me to like fully really get what's happening. And I don't know. I was just getting a little lost, and I mean, I think it was simple enough in the sense where like, okay, I can see what's happening and get it, but it wasn't really grabbing me as an audience because of how much references there were to things that I clearly didn't remember or know about.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the things about this. It kind of starts off. It it kind of hits the ground running, which you would argue is a good thing, but it also kind of feels like the even with knowledge of previous movies, it feels like this invasion is coming out of nowhere. Because when we saw Captain Marvel, the big old thing in Captain Marvel was this was them messing with people who read the comics, right? Because in the comic books, the Kree were the good guys, the Skrull were the bad guys. And so you go into the movie with that knowledge from the comics, being like the Skrulls are bad, the Skrulls are bad, the Skrulls are bad. And then because the movie wanted to hit you with a twist for the sake of a twist, like they did like in movies like Iron Man 3 and like they've done before and after, they decided to make it so that the Skrulls actually weren't the villains and that the Kree actually were. So the whole thing being that okay, so the Kree are actually bad and the Skrulls are good guys. So we were all I remember my friends and I at the time were just like, so I guess we're not going to get a secret invasion because the Skrulls are good. And so now we come back and we come into here and all of a sudden the Skrulls are evil. And it can feel like very jarring because the last time we saw these characters, they have been working. We've seen these characters like I think two times before this. We saw them in Captain Marvel and we saw them again in Far From Home. And in Far From Home, they were covering for Nick Fury and Maria Hill, and they were helping out Peter Parker Spider Man. So even then, they didn't seem like they were evil or anything, and they weren't because these are characters that we've known that have been still like working together with our leads. So it can definitely be a little bit jarring to just come in and being like, oh yeah, no, the Skrulls are bad now. And you're like, wait, what? I thought they were good. And then, the show tells you it's like, okay, it's Rogue. It's because of the fact that they haven't gotten, a planet. But then that even felt weird story wise. I'm like, because they're like, oh, well, you disappeared. Captain Marvel disappeared. And it's like, but hold up. Like, it's been 30 years. So you're telling me it was 30 years before Thanos' snap. So during that time, back in the 90s to present day, like, Captain Marvel and Nick Fury never made good on their promise to find the Skrulls a planet. That seems very, very strange and very, very counter what we know these characters to be about. So, and then afterwards with the snap, they're like, okay, well, yeah, and then you were gone because of the snap and stuff. But that doesn't explain all the time in between where they didn't do anything to help the Skrulls get a planet. So yeah, it's all. And then in that case, it's almost like, well, it's kind of surprising that the Skrulls didn't go rogue sooner than right now. And then it also makes you ask, well, what's special about right now that they're going rogue and they didn't do it like 10 years ago, back when the Avengers first showed up. So it's those kind of story questions that do come up just from even within the context of the universe that they've established.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also feel like I mean, I think it's cool when we get to see Nick Fury do Nick Fury stuff, but I also didn't feel like Nick Fury was doing Nick Fury stuff.
That too.
And,
That too.
and it kind of makes me question, like, well, why don't they call the Avengers to help with this? And I get, the Avengers can't always be called for everything because it doesn't give room for other people to shine and stuff like that. But there was never a reason why they couldn't just reach out to one at least, or someone that could help, and they had to like keep it secret. Like um, Nick Fury and Agent Hill kind of, you know, went out in the dark. Like why? Why couldn't they do this with Shield? They never gave us a reason for that. Why they had to go off and do this on their own, and then they end up getting Agent Hill killed. But then I also know it's Marvel. It doesn't mean that just because she died here doesn't mean that she's gonna stay dead. So we'll see how
we'll
that
see.
goes. Yeah,
We'll see.
but I also didn't feel like they did in a way where I cared that much, because like she just got shot and then she died. Like
That's actually one of my biggest. I hate that moment. I hate that moment
Yeah.
so much. It doesn't feel like an earned character death. It just it felt like a thing where they're like, we're doing this for the shock value of it, so that it can make you feel like, oh my gosh, anyone can catch it, and Nick Fury really is on his own. And the problem with doing Secret Invasion storyline on a TV budget is that it doesn't really make sense. The whole idea about Secret Invasion is that they replace superheroes too. So now all of a sudden you got superheroes that you think are on your side, and then you find out that Captain America is a Skrull. Like, that's the thing about Secret Invasion that is interesting. It's like they literally could be anyone, including the Avengers. And so the show is almost kind of trying to imply that, oh, maybe they could be the Avengers right now. But the thing was, like, in the context of these stories as they've appeared in the past, it was never really clear that they had infiltrated on that level. You slowly discover these things, and that's what's so intriguing. And then you start really wondering, because you're like, and because then also some people have been replaced for years. Like, there have been people that have been captured and been like on the team, and you thought that they were this person for a long, long time, and then you find out no, that person got replaced way back when that event happened back then, and that's what made that interesting. So now it's like it does, like Playmat was saying in the chat, it feels like they're doing it just for the sake of doing it, because you don't have that level of intrigue. If you're only going to be doing this with Shield agents, you got Maria Hill, you got Ross, and you got Nick Fury, and that's basically it. And Ross basically doesn't seem like he's in this show. He's already been replaced, so he's probably like tied up somewhere, and then they just shot and killed like Maria Hill. And like you said, there's like, it was such an unceremonious death for a character that's been in this franchise for like 10 years. This is a capable freaking human being. Like, this is how she goes out. I hated that moment so much. I ended the episode angry because of that, because that did not feel right for Maria Hill. And then, like you said about Nick Fury doesn't even feel like Nick Fury, really. It almost kind of feels like, because they're trying to do the post-traumatic stress thing with him, where he's like, he got snapped away and now he's back, and like he's kind of shook. But it's like, okay, well, we kind of saw this storyline with Iron Man already. They did that with him in Iron Man 3. But also, it almost kind of also feels like they're kind of trying to do almost kind of like a Luke Skywalker thing with him, of like the broken mentor that isn't like as good as he used to be. People keep telling him, you're not that good anymore, you're not who we expected, and everything else like that. And in the context of the show, they're kind of right. We haven't really seen anything that makes him feel really Nick Fury-ish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what they're trying to do, but all I know is they're like, I just really feel like Nick Fury is really washed up. Like, they fooled him at the end, and then they killed Agent Hill. Um, but also, you would think them being, super secret agents that are very skilled would one figure out like a passcode kind of thing, like so that they
Mm-hmm.
could have a system set up so they can prove to
Yes.
each other
Yes. Oh my God, you're
who the
right.
person is. And like, for a show being called Secret Invasion, I don't like, what's the secret? They revealed to us at the very beginning that there's
There's an invasion.
there's an invasion, and everybody knows about it, except for, I guess, the average person, like the average citizen. But yeah, I mean, like, they just weren't very like good spies, even like with that whole thing with the backpacks um, being marked, and then I don't know why he doesn't tell Nick and Hill that that the backpacks will be marked with infrared until they get there. Like, shouldn't they go into it with the plan? And like, I
Yes.
kind of get like why they did it that way, because they want to basically spoon feed us information so that we understand like why we're seeing that. But then also, um, Amelia Clark's character tells him that, like, literally the scene right before that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I. I think it's just a little bit too much spoon feeding. I honestly don't think they did it by accident. I think they really wanted to have the scene play out that way, and it's just, I mean, because maybe someone thought that it would look really cool and like seem really cool to have it, him be like, oh yeah, they're gonna be marked with infrared light.
Yeah,
We're
no,
cool
they
spies doing cool spy things.
right. Yeah, they're trying to do like their cool spy thriller in television form, right? And
But it's bad.
yeah, it just doesn't feel that effective. I mean, because yeah, like Playmat said, like imagine if they set it up so that the invasion was actually a secret at the end and it became an Avengers film. Because like this is the type of thing that you set up over multiple films. This is like its own kind of phase. So it's kind of weird that they're all of a sudden they're just kind of jam packing it into like a 6 episode series that doesn't really feel like an invasion at all. It just feels like a moment. So it's not the biggest problem is that it's not big enough. Because, like we said earlier at the top of the show, you can't bring in the Avengers in this show. We're not going to see any of the Avengers, the ones that are still alive. They're just not going to make an appearance in here. So, and that's part of why I think that they killed Maria Hill because they realized there aren't any real stakes. Like you think about the characters that we could see in this show that they could get because of like budget or whatever. There's not many that we could get, and I feel like we got all the ones that we could get in the first episode. Now, it is the first episode, so they could surprise us in the last 5 with other people that could show up. But we know how Marvel usually does things with this level of television show. So there's a good chance that none of the bigger characters are going to make an appearance in this smaller show, even though Nick Fury himself is in it.
Yeah, I think they blew their budget on Samuel L. Jackson, to be honest. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like, from someone who doesn't know the backstory, I really feel like they could have done something with this without needing a big budget. Just make it a cool, spy movie, a spy series. That's perfectly fine. Like, you really don't need to have the Avengers, although it can make it a lot cooler. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think for a series, we're not gonna expect, the Avengers to show up, and that's totally okay. But you
Yes.
have to be a little bit more clever with what you're going to do if you're not gonna have, the Avengers, or if you're gonna downplay such a big story.
Yeah.
Be more
Yeah.
creative.
Yes, I think it is very hard to do an invasion story on the small scale, right? I get that it's
Yeah.
a hidden invasion, but that's the idea. It's supposed to be an invasion of a planet. By that simple metric, that's huge. So it's hard to make that small. Even if it's secret, it's very challenging to make that small. So I I don't know. I hear what you're saying, and I think that it is possible. You do have to just be more creative, but I think the story kind of lends itself to being inherently bigger because it is an invasion. Like invasions are a big deal. That's a huge deal. It's an invasion of a planet, not like a city. At least if it's being done the way it's supposed to. So yeah, and we might as well talk about this since Caboose brought it up in the chat for a little bit. The opening titles. I don't know if you heard about them. When you saw the opening titles, did they look like strange and weird to you?
I think I can't even remember the opening titles, to be honest.
That says something too. But the whole thing about it is that they did their opening titles using an AI generator, AI generated art.
Oh.
Marvel. Marvel, who has money, and also apparently had some artists that actually did work on doing an actual opening, and those artists didn't even find out that they didn't use that work and instead used an AI generated artwork until like the show had come out. And it looks awful. It looks terrible. It looks like AI generated art. And you just can't help but ask, like, why did Marvel do
Why?
this?
I ask that a lot about things that they put out in Hollywood, and that's also, I'm getting kind of tired of um, these big things. And I mean, this goes way back. I've been tired of Marvel like years ago, because it's the same old formula, like do over, and every once in a blue moon you get a good one. But
Yeah.
but even their good ones are like only okay. Like, it's not the greatest thing I've ever seen and stuff like that. And like, it's just getting to a point where these things are so milked for just making money, and it ceases to be art, and there
Mm-hmm.
ceases to be any love in the art that is being done. And I know we were, kind of briefly talking about this earlier about Daniel Radcliffe's movie for the Weird Al movie, where
Mm-hmm.
they're just making movies for, out of passion, and so the result of that is getting something entertaining. And I truly feel like these kind of movies are like everything that Marvel chugs out has like no passion in it. Like they're just trying to make money by slapping names on it, a brand on it, and they put no thought into the story.
Yeah, I think that is generally true for most of Marvel's properties. We're gonna see when Puna mentioned in the chat about when Guardians 3 comes out. We'll get to see when we get to watch that when that comes to Disney Plus. I did see that movie, so it'll be interesting for us to talk about that. But yeah, I think as a whole, you're 100% right, and that's kind of what this feels. It kind of feels like factory Marvel, and it's not. It doesn't have the highs of like old school factory Marvel. So it's kind of unfortunate. But once again, this is all based off of the first episode. We concede that those feelings could change. They could surprise us over the next 5 episodes. But based on this first episode, we are unimpressed. And like, and Playmat mentioned this too, and I think that's even what you were talking about. Like, if you were going to do it also on a small scale, then you could even have this moment of something that shows that they feel like the Avengers might have been infiltrated. And if the Avengers are infiltrated, then that makes it even more sense where they're like, we can't trust the Avengers. We've been in a small team, just us, for like the last like year, so we know that we're not Skrulls, but we don't know about anyone else, so we're the only ones that can do this. And then now it makes more sense that you're just following the small team. But they want it to be just about Nick Fury, and I think that that is going to be, and I guess Talos. I think that's the other Skrull's name, but that's going to make it very challenging, I think, to make something interesting, especially because Samuel L. Jackson is like 70 years old. Okay, this man is not doing much, and I know that they'll have stunt people do some of the other movements and things like that, but this Nick Fury is not a active action Nick Fury, which is probably why we have Talos, so that he can be the person that delivers us on like cool martial arts action or things like that. But I feel like we're going to have a tough time being able to connect with what's going on, but also being able to have cool moments connected with this show. But we shall see. Based on the first episode, I don't I don't see how this could get better. Um, but I will concede that it could.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they killed off Agent Hill's character, it's like, why would you kill the only female agent? Like, I know like Amelia Clark's in it, but now there's only one
Also,
actress.
it's Maria Hill. She has been there since the
The
first Avengers
beginning,
movie.
yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, she is Nick Fury's right hand. She should be just as capable as Nick Fury, if not more capable, because she's younger. So she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go out like that. If she goes out, she goes out hard. So so disrespectful. I hate what they did with it. And you know what? Something's probably gonna happen where we find out at the end that it wasn't her and it was a scroll and she just didn't transform after she died or some crap like that. That she had been replaced and so she's somewhere being like controlled and she had already been replaced and then she'll be alive. Maybe we'll find that out. Whatever. Still though, even as a way to just trick us, it's it just it does
No.
not feel good.
Yeah. I mean, it's just even if it was a trick, it would just be very like, why?
Still would be
Why
dumb.
though? Yeah, still would be dumb. Like, what is the point? Like, you have to have a reason for doing these things besides, like, oh, we want to play a thing, like a trick on the audience. And they're going to be like, oh my God. Like, no, put some
Hmm.
thought into it. Like, why does it matter?
So, you know what's funny? I read this earlier in the chat where people were saying that I was being very critical for someone that was not the one saying that it wasn't that good. But I realized the more that I talked about it, the more that I hated it. So, you're right, guys.
But
It wasn't that good.
yeah.
Y'all,
Yeah.
you're right.
Oh God, goodness gracious. Um,
All right. I don't
but
have
yeah.
anything else to say. Do you?
No, I was just gonna say, I think that happens to us a lot where we're like, oh yeah, it was only okay, and then after we talk about it, we're like, it was the worst.
It was actually pretty bad. So, whatever. New episode's coming out later this week. I'll see how I feel about episode 2, and then after that, that'll determine whether or not I keep watching. But I don't even know if this is a show that's worth watching week to week. It might even be worth watching, like, binging, but maybe that just makes it easier. Either way,
Nah, I'm
we'll
done.
see. All right, there you go. Won't be coming back and talking about this one at the season finale. But that's what we thought about Secret Invasion. What did you guys think about it? Do you think we're being too hard on it? Did you enjoy it? Did you think that Maria Hill got a good send off if she's actually dead? What have you thought about it? Comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, or am I?